evening and welcome to the 607th episode of Travel Itch. I'm Dan Schlossberg and we are in the 14th season of Travel Itch Radio, the show that lets you enjoy the pleasures of travel from the comfort of your armchair. Every week at this time, we talk to people representing destinations, hotels, airlines, railroads, car rental companies, and others in the world of travel and hospitality, from authors and bloggers to broadcasters and publicists. If it's got anything to do with travel, it's got everything to do with Travel Itch. Our guest today is Jerry Evans, PR manager of Fairbanks, Alaska. Beautiful, photogenic Fairbanks, Alaska, I should add. Welcome, Jerry, to the new video version of Travel Itch.
Outstanding. Well, thank you for having me, Dan. Always a pleasure to talk with you, and now we get to do it in front of other people.
Well, Jerry, it's Aurora season, so welcome to Aurora season. Tell us what that means for Fairbanks.
Well, right now it means it's going to be winter pretty soon, but for our visitors, it means now's your chance to see the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis in what I can argue scientifically is Fairbanks being the best place on the planet to see the Northern Lights.
Well, it certainly looks beautiful. How long does Aurora season last, and does it happen every night?
Well, we call Aurora season starting August 21st, this very day, which is ironic that you said we wanted to do radio together. Which day? I'm like, August 21st. It's officially the start of Aurora season today, and it will extend all the way through until April 21st.
Wow. Well, you know I'm a baseball fan, so did you throw out the first pitch for Aurora season?
No, it's for us, it's just like any other day. Like I say, it's finally, it's Aurora season, so that also means it's getting dark enough at night for us to finally get some sleep. So it's a nice combination.
Well, speaking of the Northern Lights, how many days in an average year are they visible over Fairbanks? And are they not visible at all in the summer?
Well, they say it's visible 200 days a year in Fairbanks. And no, it's not viewable in the summertime. And the reason why, it's I won't get too sciencey, but there's aurora activity every night of the year. But because, of course, during our midnight sun season, where there's 70 days of light, it just doesn't get dark enough to see it. And that's why we always say aurora season starts on August 21st, because that's when it finally gets dark enough for us to be able to see the aurora activity.
Well, as I just mentioned, I'm a huge baseball fan.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear about that annual Midnight Sun game played entirely at night without lights of any kind.
Yes, it's very unique. And I did a little research on some of the stuff. The first Midnight Sun game was in 1906. So we are celebrating this summer our 119th Midnight Sun game. And so it started out as a bar bet between a couple of local bars back in 1906, and it evolved into this semi-professional baseball game. So it's the Alaska Gold Panthers, and they've been playing it every year since 1960, even though the game preceded that. And so it's a unique game, not only because it's played on either June 20th or 21st, our summer solstice, but it starts at 10:30 at night. And here's where the real tricky part is, as you know, Dan, is it's played with no artificial lighting. And so the game often goes well past midnight. And if you want to know how well can you see after midnight in Fairbanks, Alaska on June 21st, you can see enough to dodge a fastball coming at you at 95 miles an hour. So they wouldn't put themselves in harm's way unless they could see.
Well, tell us about the Alaska Gold Panthers. I know Dave Winfield, Tom Seaver, and other future Baseball Hall of Famers played for that team on their way up.
Yeah, you know, it's actually one of the most historic teams, amateur teams in history. It started here in 1960, and those names you mentioned, Tony Francona, the Reynolds brothers, Bob Boone, the Boone brothers, a ton of people have played. As a matter of fact, now this one, I wanted to get the statistic down on because it's the 119th game. So remarkably, 1,180 players from the Gold Panthers have been drafted into the Major League Baseball, including 125 first-round picks and 19 players that have played for the Gold Panthers were drafted either first or second overall. So when you look back at the pedigree that the Alaska Gold Panthers has, it's pretty impressive. As a matter of fact, Dave Winfield was just up here this summer and the summer before because we dedicated a statue to Dave Winfield hitting a historic shot that we call the moon shot because it went out of the ballpark, across the street, and landed on the roof of the curling club. So it's a famous shot for the Gold Panthers. But yes, it's a wonderful way to watch baseball any time of the summer, but particularly during the midnight sun game.
And since we mentioned summer, you actually have kayaks here too.
We do, and what you're seeing now, this is probably in Southeast Alaska. We do, we love the water. There's really the reason Fairbanks is here is because of the Chena River. So we're kind of a river town. So any time we can get out on the river, whether it's kayaking, canoeing, the stern, we have a couple of stern wheelers here, rafting, anytime out on the water, we do.
And in the winter, snowshoeing, among other activities?
Yeah, it's wintertime. A lot of people would think you would just hole up no matter how cold it gets, but we don't do that here. It's just another season for us. And so, yes, there's more people than you would guess do dog mushing or at least ski joring, where they hook a single dog up to their skis and they go. We have cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, snow machining, snowmobiling, and snow machine. Now we call it snow machining in Alaska. So if you're a visitor, you come up to Alaska in the winter and you want to sound like a local, you never say snowmobile, you always say snow machine.
Okay, and I'm a dog lover, so I love dog mushing and dog sleds. So what can people do? What can visitors do as far as dogs go in Fairbanks?
Well, during the wintertime, going dog mushing, we have a number of groups, organizations, businesses, families that will take you out dog mushing. You can't, if you have dogs, you can't not take them out to mush. There are some people go, well, isn't that kind of cruel, harnessing up dogs and taking them out to run. If you've ever owned a dog and you ever reach for the leash on the door, yeah, one of the dog's not going to get excited to go. So that's what they do. They love to run, and some places have turned their passion into businesses where you could pay to go out with them. But there are a lot of people here who just love dog mushing on their own, and each and every one of those dogs are family pets to them. So there's plenty of dog mushing up here. We have dog mushing races, the farthest North American dog race. We have the Yukon Quest starts from here. So there's a number of ways for you to be a dog lover in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Is there skiing in Fairbanks? And what about snowmobiling, snowshoeing, ice fishing, hiking, even making ice sculptures?
All that stuff. We don't sit around and just sit by idly. As I mentioned, obviously you want to dress for it. And if you're a visitor here, you might not necessarily, if you're visiting from Florida or Costa Rica, you may not have the gear. Most of the dog mushing places and snow machining businesses, they have gloves and hats and suits that you can wear. So you don't have to purchase an entire winter set for something you may only use once. But yes, we definitely get out of the house. We definitely try to take advantage of the winter. And people say, well, how cold is too cold? As long as you're dressed for it, there is no such thing as too cold. I can get by in cold weather much easier than I can in hot weather, because when it gets 110 degrees, you can only take off so much clothes legally. So no, we love the winter up here, and we take full advantage of it.
Is there, how many days of daylight are there during a typical winter day in Fairbanks?
Our shortest day of the year is December 21st, and our longest day is June 21st. So usually we call that our winter solstice, December 21st. We technically have 3 hours and 41 minutes of daylight. Now that's not sunshine, that's just daylight, because that time of year the sun barely goes up over the horizon. And the unique thing about Fairbanks is nothing stays the same. This isn't San Diego where it's the same thing day in, day out. We're either losing or gaining 6 minutes of daylight every day. And so everything changes rapidly. So even though the sun barely comes up over the horizon in December 21st, 6 months later, June 21st, it barely goes underneath the horizon. So things change here rapidly. We adapt to it, and we always find something to do.
And in summer, how many days of sunlight and hours of daylight per day?
Well, we call it a midnight sun season because the end of, as I mentioned, the end of the aurora season is April 21st. And the reason that's the end of the season is because now it's light out at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we have 70 days of light. Now the sun will barely go down over the horizon, but it doesn't get dark. Again, it's it's light enough to see a pitcher throwing a fastball at you. So now we have 70 days of light, and anything you do, any activity is just enhanced if you're doing it at that time. I think we've talked about this. If you're a golfer, it's great to come up to Alaska and play golf. But if you have a midnight tee time, talk about bragging rights. If you're taking a picture of yourself teeing off at like midnight with the sun blaring down and you got sunglasses on, that's a pretty good photo opportunity.
And Jerry, what are the primary summer pastimes for tourists? We hear that range, you mentioned golf, gold panning, camping, riding the riverboat, and visiting farmers markets.
There's a ton of stuff to do here. And we can talk about the farmers market, but there are a number of different ways to approach it. There are some people who come up on the cruise ships and will take the train to Fairbanks and just spend a day. And most of those are organized tours. So when you're doing that, you're usually going out on the riverboat and learning about native villages and dog mushing, and then going and doing some gold panning. So if you're here for a day, you got to kind of squeeze it in. But boy, if you can stay up here for a couple of days, you can rent a kayak and float through town. You can go hiking. You can go camping. You can kind of hang out with the locals. A lot of people like to travel, but one day really isn't kind of enough to really, get a sample. But if you want to spend 3 or 4 days up here, and that's the time when you can go to, I don't know, maybe a local brewery and sit down, somebody next to you and exchange stories and find out about the real people. Because that's as beautiful as Alaska is. It's kind of the people that really make it special.
Is it fair to say Fairbanks offers hiking, biking, fishing, sightseeing, museums, camping, and a wide variety of cultural experiences just about all year round?
Pretty much, yeah. There are some things that will stay, because you got to remember the summertime, we can get up to 80, 90 degrees. In the wintertime, we can get 50 to 60 below. So there's some things that will be there year round, the restaurants, the museums, the breweries, the distilleries, but other things change rapidly. And so most activities and most places here are dual purpose. In other words, the cross-country ski trails in the wintertime, once the summertime comes along, now they're biking and hiking and disc golf trails. The rivers that you're kayaking down in the middle of the summer, in the middle of the winter, you're probably snow machining down. So everything has two purposes here. And again, we stay busy through all of it.
I especially love national parks, and Fairbanks has its share, including Denali National Park, home of Mount McKinley. How close are Denali and the Arctic Circle?
Well, Denali's about a 2-hour drive or 4-hour train ride to the south. And then to the north, the Arctic Circle, I should have a better idea of this. It's up over 100 miles up. And we have a couple of national parks there, the Gates of the Arctic, beautiful, Kobuk National Parks, but of course, those are less frequently visited because they're not as easy to get to. You got to remember, there's not a lot of roads in Alaska, and there's only one that goes north of here, and it's only paved for so far.
Yeah, and that is Gates of the Arctic National Park. What a picture. The rainbow, it's just gorgeous.
It is beautiful. And as a matter of fact, when people come up, and we'd love to have you up to show you this in person, Dan, or any of your listeners, there's a couple of different groups that will fly you up to Coldfoot, up above the Arctic Circle, so you can see it from that perspective, and then you drive back. And again, keeping in mind, there's only one road. They call it the loneliest highway because it's the least traveled highway in the United States, as you can imagine.
Is there any chance a visitor might encounter a reindeer, and how about elk during rutting season?
Um, Elk a little further to the south. And what was the other one? Caribou, did you ask? Or
Reindeer. Reindeer.
reindeer?
Well, caribou is good too.
You know what? The thing is, you're very likely to see caribou up here because I didn't know if you knew this. There are more caribou than people in Alaska, so your chances of
Oh,
seeing a caribou are really good. But reindeer, a lot of people don't necessarily make the association because we're used to Santa Claus and his sleigh, but reindeer are basically domesticated caribou. So like if you come up to Alaska and are off on a wildlife viewing, then you might run into caribou. But if you go to a place like Running Reindeer Ranch, where you can walk through the boreal forest with the reindeer right next to you, we have yoga with reindeer. So reindeer are basically caribou. So the big difference is if you're seeing them in the wild, they're caribou. If you're seeing them more domesticated than their reindeer. A lot of people can't tell the difference because there isn't much.
is it true that Fairbanks is full of galleries that feature end-of-the-road artists and sculptors? And are there shows and special events at your museums?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people don't realize Fairbanks is a very, very artistic community. And part of the reason why is the long, dark winters up here. The artists can guilt-free stay inside and do their paintings, do their pottery, do their carvings, do all of that stuff. And then once it becomes summertime, then they'll go out to the farmers markets and the craft fairs and sell their wares. So I always tell people, if you ever want to write your manuscript or a screenplay, wintertime in Fairbanks is a good time to do it because you can stay inside guilt-free because unless you choose to be outside, you don't have to go out there.
Jerry, no matter what the season, people have to eat. So what does Fairbanks have to offer? I know we're talking fine dining to food trucks, but is there an international flavor from vegan to sushi, Vietnamese, Italian, Thai, Indian, even barbecue?
Yeah, it's all over the place. If people usually associate salmon and halibut and crab with Alaska and Fairbanks, and you should because it's delicious. But we have people from all over the world open up great restaurants here. We have over 25 Thai restaurants, which is amazing for the size of Fairbanks. But the great thing about them is, as I mentioned before, our summer season here, with all that daylight, our farmers markets and everything, our growing season is very short, but it's very intense. And so most of the local restaurants will try to be as farm to the table as they can. I mean, there might not be many places where you can go and get authentic salmon pad thai for dinner. So people try infusing what we have growing here in the summertime into the food. So it's really a wide swath. There's not really one thing that you would call this is typical Alaskan food, except for the ingredients like salmon and halibut and crab.
Okay, since you mentioned caribou, can you get a CLT on toast?
You can get reindeer on. You can get a RLT. Yeah, so you can. And again, because the caribou are almost the same, but you can't. I have friends who hunt, and they will bring me bear meat and caribou meat and moose meat, but you can't buy those in a store because it has to go through federal regulations, like a lot of things do. But you can buy reindeer, and you can buy reindeer sausage, and that you can eat at the restaurant. You probably don't want to do it with your kids around Christmas time, but other than that, you can have some delicious reindeer.
Where can visitors experience Native American arts and culture? And is it seasonal or ongoing all year?
It's kind of ongoing all year. We have a couple of large events like the World Eskimo Indian Olympics that go on during the summertime. We also have the Festival of Native Arts, the Athabascan Fiddle Festivals. But the great thing about these events that the indigenous people put on is this isn't like Hawaii. If you go to a luau in Hawaii, which is great, and I've gone to them, they're kind of putting on a show, and they're putting on a show for the visitors. But at these things like the Athabascan Fiddle Festival, Festival of Native Arts, World Eskimo Indian Olympics, they're going to be doing that. They were doing that for them. So if you have the opportunity to go see it, it's a great time, but they're not doing it to put on a show for somebody. They're doing it because that's what they love doing, and they don't mind if you kind of tag along and watch.
Okay, this is Travel Itch with Dan Schlossberg. We're in our 14th season, live at 5 New York time every Thursday on LinkedIn, YouTube, WhatsApp, X, and Facebook, among others. And today, August 21st, is the beginning of Aurora season in Fairbanks. Yeah. What are the peak and bargain seasons for Fairbanks, Jerry?
Well, we have our two shoulder seasons. We have almost as many visitors in the winter as we do in the summer. And a lot of that is because Fairbanks is such a great place to see the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis. But we do have our shoulder seasons. And since we're friends, Dan, we've chatted many times in the past, I'm going to assume that your listeners are my friend also. So I'll tell you what I would tell a friend that I know you don't normally see in all of our flyers and guides and all that kind of stuff. There are two shoulder seasons, springtime and fall time. If you have a chance to choose one, you definitely want to go for the fall season. I'll give you a quick reason why. In the don't tell my bosses I told you this, but in this springtime, the snow is going away, so the ice is melting. Nothing's quite green yet, and it gets a little muddy and a little dirty. Now, on the fall side, my favorite time of year here is what they call the fall shoulder season, which is mid to late August into early mid-September. That's because everything's green, everything's lush. And again, starting August 21st is Aurora season. So if you come here in later August, this time of year, or into early September, you can still do all your great outdoor activities. Everything's green and lush, and you get a chance at seeing the Aurora. So if you have the opportunity to pick either side, don't get me wrong, springtime's okay, but fall is what you'd want to do.
Jerry, how big is Fairbanks, and are you seeing a building boom in hotels and restaurants?
People describe Fairbanks population-wise depending on how they want to sound. So the city of Fairbanks proper is about 32,000 people. And it's all part of what we call, it's like a county, but we call it the Fairbanks North Star Borough. And in that area, there's 100,000 people. So if we want to sound quaint, I say 32. If we want to sound like a thriving metropolis, we say 100,000. But the borough, Fairbanks North Star Borough, we have 100,000, is roughly the same size as Massachusetts. And Massachusetts has 7 million people. So we've got the area, just not as many people.
Okay. During the 4 years I spent at Syracuse University, which was so cold I named it Zerocuse. Okay. I thought that was the coldest place in the U.S. But set me straight, Fairbanks has it beat. Is it true the average temperature is 3 in January?
It's -3 in January. And I did look this up because, no offense, but I'm going to give you some credit here in a second, Dan. So don't shut me off. Average temperature in January in Fairbanks is -3. In Syracuse, it's 19 degrees on the plus side. But here's why it might feel colder in Syracuse. We don't get the wet wind. We don't get the wind that cuts through you. So I've been to New York and Chicago, where I felt colder than I've ever felt in Fairbanks because you get that moist breeze going through. So technically, temperature-wise, we get much colder, but you guys have quite the wind chill factor. I'll give you that.
Yeah, the humidity is terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, do most Fairbanks visitors come by plane, train, or automobile? And what's the driving time to places like Denali, Arctic Circle, North Pole? And what will visitors find at the North Pole?
Okay. Most people get here by flying. There is the Alaska-Canadian Highway. So there are quite a few people that come up, but those are people who usually have campers or can camp along the way. And a lot of people who come up for those short little bursts will come up on a cruise ship down through Southeast Alaska, and then they'll come up and take the train maybe up to Fairbanks. So probably most fly, some drive, and some will take the train up from Denali. And Denali is about 2-hour drive south of Fairbanks. The Arctic Circle, I think it would probably take you 3 hours roughly to get there. That's because the roads aren't paved the whole way, so it might take you a little longer. But the city of North Pole, not Santa Claus's real place, but is about a 20-minute drive out of Fairbanks. So the city of North Pole, Alaska, they're saying is North Pole, Alaska, where it's Christmas every day. So you can imagine a city, even in the summertime, where the street lights are made out of candy canes, look like candy canes, and of course Santa Claus house is there. And a lot of people who come up and visit in the winter, they bring or they buy gifts that they want to send to people for Christmas. So you can write a postcard in June in North Pole, Alaska, give it to the people at Santa Claus house, and they'll mail it out 2 weeks before Christmas. So someone will get a postcard that says North Pole around Christmas time. So a lot of people do that. So it's the city of North Pole, and Santa Claus house is out there. It's very festive any time of year, but especially around the holidays.
Since Fairbanks has an international airport, is the flying time from Denver and Minneapolis about equal, of maybe 5 hours or so?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And because somebody, it might have been you that asked me this, they say, well, why does it take from Minneapolis and Denver 4 or 5 hours, but then from New York, it would take 9 hours? And that's because seasonally, from time to time, we have nonstops from Minneapolis and Denver and other places. So those would be nonstops. There is no nonstop flight from New York. So the actual travel time would be about 9 hours, because they're going to have to set down somewhere, most likely in Seattle.
Jerry, let's talk a little history.
Sure.
When, why, and how was Fairbanks founded?
That's a lot to go through. So I wanted to make sure. So it was founded in 1901 when E.T. Barnett, and he was somebody who would come up and set up trade places to go and trade goods and supplies for furs and gold and that type of stuff. Well, he wanted to go further up into Alaska, but he couldn't get up the Yukon River. So the guy that was piloting the stern wheel said, well, let's try to go up the Chena River. So they went as far as they could, and they said, we can't go any further. So either you're going to put your stuff off here, or you're coming back to Seattle with us. And so he had heard tell that there may be gold in this area. So they just dumped him and his supplies off here. And soon after that, gold was discovered outside of Fairbanks. And so this became a gold town, and it all started. The reason it's here is because the boat couldn't get any further upriver.
Wasn't the town actually named for a vice president of the United States?
It was Charles Fairbanks, who was vice president to Theodore Roosevelt.
And Fairbanks wasn't the Strawberry King, but Harry Badger was, and a road was named after him. Considering your growing season is so short, how do strawberries and other crops manage? And what about your other crops?
Well, the midnight sun season, we're 70 days of light. So we don't have farmers markets in the middle of the winter. We have no need for them. But our growing season is so short and it's so intense that things grow larger than you would expect. And we have, record sizes, cabbages and tomatoes and pumpkins and all that kind of stuff. And one thing that people notice is that the vegetation here is larger and sweeter. Like if you've ever had an Alaska blueberry, you will definitely be able to tell the difference. The same with carrots. You could put an Alaskan carrot next to a carrot anywhere else. A lot of it is because of the cool ground and the short, intense growing season. So there's a little bit of taste difference, but it's always on the sweeter side. So our farmers markets in the summer and our farm to table scene, that's when it explodes during that time. But Alaskans have also gotten very good at jarring and preserving things like this, because they have to last us all the way through the winter, because as you and your listeners might imagine, things don't grow up here very well with no daylight and 40 below weathers.
At Travelwitch, we love trains, especially steam engines and anything that runs on rails. Didn't railroads play a major role in the development of Fairbanks?
It did, actually, yeah. People may not realize that there isn't an actual train that runs from lower 48, as we call you guys, up to Alaska. But they've talked about it, but there is a railroad that runs south of Anchorage all the way up to Fairbanks. So it pretty much ends right around Fairbanks, but that really opened it up for produce and product to be brought from Anchorage, from the ports there, all the way up to Fairbanks, which is about 360 miles.
I recall taking the train to Denali. That was great. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful time, and that train, the Alaska train, is still, I think now is the last what they call whistle stop train. In other words, if you have a homestead or a house and a cabin somewhere along the way, if you plan ahead of time, they'll just stop the train with everybody and everything on it, and they'll let you off. You could be stopping what seems like in the middle of nowhere and letting somebody with a backpack off, but he's probably got a cabin a mile or two off the road.
And is it true that most roads around Fairbanks weren't paved until 1940?
That is true, and some still aren't. But yeah, with the war effort and the Alaska Canadian Highway coming up, a lot are paved. And as I mentioned, the Dalton Highway, or the Haul Road from Fairbanks all the way up to Prudhoe Bay, which is at the top of Alaska, only a small portion of that is paved, but yet it gets traveled by truckers and visitors every day.
And getting back to your location, something like 16 degrees north of the Pacific border between Canada and the U.S., tell us about the midnight sun phenomenon that occurs around the summer solstice.
Yeah, well, that's the midnight sun, where it just we're here, we get 70 days of light. The sun technically sets, but of course, as you imagine, the further north you go, once you get above the Arctic Circle, that's kind of that sweet spot. Once you're on the other side of the Arctic Circle, you can experience 24 hours of sunshine or 24 hours of complete darkness. When you get up to the tippy top of Alaska, around Barrow, or it's called Utqiagvik now, to its original native name. If you're up there during our winter solstice, they have what they call 40 days of night, which means the sun does not come up for 40 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't Fairbanks south of the Arctic tree line?
It is. The Arctic tree line, and I wanted to make sure I got this right, is about 150 miles north of Fairbanks. And for those of you that might not know, but basically the tree line is, I'm going to point this out, Alaska is such a huge place a lot of people don't realize. The way I'd like to describe it, Dan, is Kotzebue, Alaska to Ketchikan, Alaska, and a straight line is further than Vancouver, British Columbia to Tijuana, Mexico. So it's a long ways. So as we get a lot of trees down south, the further you get up north, it's so cold and the ground is permanently frozen. They call it permafrost. So it gets to a point where it's so cold that the trees can no longer grow and it turns into tundra. And that's about 150 miles north of Fairbanks.
Can it snow any day of the year?
It could, but I looked this up because I knew you were going to ask this, Dan. You're an inquisitive person. So the last recorded snowfall was at sometime in May, and the first snowfall ever recorded was in August. So you're not likely to see it in the middle, but that's still a pretty big span. For about 10 months or so, you definitely have a chance of getting snowed on. And I've seen it in early September, and I've also seen it in May.
And the winter solstice is coming up December 21 to 22. You get something like 3 hours and 41 minutes of sunlight?
Yeah. And we celebrate everything here. So yes, we have winter solstice festivals, and that's usually a time of year. It's funny because that's when we have then, and New Year's is when we do our big fireworks shows here. Because in the States, the lower 48, you guys would probably have fireworks on the 4th of July, which makes sense. But the 4th of July here, it's still sunny out at night. So when you put off fireworks, you don't see sparkle. You see a little puff of smoke, and that's all you see. So we have to let it get dark enough. So that gives us something to celebrate in the winter, another thing to celebrate. So a lot of hot chocolate, a lot of spiced rum, and a lot of fireworks in the winter here.
This past February, Fairbanks hosted the 2014 Arctic Winter Games. What is that, and where will it be held next year?
Well, Arctic Winter Games is, what they do is they basically, athletes from polar Arctic communities, some of them oftentimes in Russia, oftentimes in Canada, will meet in one place, and they have an Olympics. And these are more traditional things as well. You have cross-country skiing, that type of stuff. But it's like a little mini Olympics for Arctic regions. And actually last year, it was held in 2014 in Fairbanks. Last year, a little further south to our friends at Matanuska Sitka Valley. That's the first time they've ever hosted it, was this year. And in 2026, it's going to be in Whitehorse in the Yukon Territory. Originally, it was going to be taking place in Russia, but we're still trying to figure out our terms with them. So we decided, well, we better keep it over in this continent.
Okay, what is the Sanot Kazut?
That's a cross-country ski race. I believe it's in its, for decades, it's been going on. It's just another thing for people to get out and celebrate. And it's a cross-country skiing event that's held every March. When it starts to get a little warmer here, it blends sport, community, and winter culture. So it's just, it's a bunch of people getting out at a race. Some people do it seriously. Some people do it just for fun. But again, just an excuse for us to get out of the house in the winter and have some fun.
And we cannot ignore the Yukon Quest 1,000-mile sled dog race. What's that like?
Well, and this probably changed since the last time we talked, Dan, but the Yukon Quest used to be all the way across the Canadian border and into the Yukon Territory. So now, since COVID hit, it's just changed a lot of things. Now, our portion we have an Alaskan portion of it that goes 300 miles, still considered the toughest, if not the toughest dog sled race in the world. And then Canada has their own as well, but it's still a 300 to 400 mile dog sledding race, which is fascinating to watch. And that will start or end in Fairbanks.
And we hear that Fairbanks actually has a speedboat race too. Please share.
We do. That's called the Yukon 800, and it runs 800 miles from Fairbanks to Galena. It's been going on since 1960. It's the only time of the year during the summertime that you probably don't want to take a raft and float down the Chena River, because those boats don't mess around. So it's 800-mile race, the Yukon 800, but it's fascinating, and people line the river like they would a NASCAR race to root on their favorite competitors.
And we understand that Fairbanks is the smallest city in the United States with international flights. True or false?
I had to look that one up because I'm thinking, could it be? It is definitely true. And we're not even talking just, technically Canada would be international, but that'd be cheating because they're right next door to us. So no, we have nonstop flights coming in from Asia. And of course, Condor Air has nonstop flights from Frankfurt, Germany, that often come up to Alaska or return from Fairbanks. So so we are the smallest. I can tell you now that is a fact.
Jerry, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to add?
I think we've represented it pretty well, but the one thing that I really didn't get to talk about too much is the people. And that's, if you have the opportunity to spend more than a day, and I'm not even saying this as somebody that works at the visitor industry, I'm just saying this as a person who loves to travel. When you go somewhere, part of that experience is hanging out and meeting local people. And the people in Alaska, you're not going to find a friendlier group of people. Sometimes there's tensions in the world now, especially if you get on Facebook sometime, you can argue with people. But the analogy I always give, if I go off the road, or if I get stuck in the snow, I could have a guy pulling up in a Ford F-150 with a "Let's Go Brandon" bumper sticker, pull up right next to somebody in a Subaru with a Coexist bumper sticker, and we all get out and we all get together. So ultimately, we might not have the same beliefs, the same lifestyles, anything of that, but we all have each other's back up here, and we're very welcoming people and good, warm people. And I think if you have the opportunity to meet and talk and hang out with some of us, you'll find that as well. And we love showing off our home.
Our guest today on Travelich has been Jerry Evans, PR Manager of Explore Fairbanks. Many thanks, Jerry, for visiting with us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome. And that's it for this edition of Travelich Radio. This is your host and writer, Dan Schlossberg, saying thank you for your time this time. Until next time, next week, we'll talk all things South Dakota with Caitlin Svensson. Global Public Relations and Content Services Supervisor for Travel South Dakota. For now, good night and stay safe. And I'm going to try to find my closing music, which is never easy, but give it a shot here. Never cooperating, but you never know. Bear with me. Can't find it. It's not, the computer's not cooperating with me. So we'll do what we can and just say good night, and we'll see you next week.
Good night.
Thanks so much, Jerry.
Thank you, Dan.